Finally, you're here. Where have you been?
I've been around the world, in the trenches, but glad to be here. It's been such a wonderful journey. I'm currently situated in Los Angeles, and grateful to be alive.
You got it, man. I'm thrilled to have you here. And so everybody knows it's Wemimo is the first name, Abbey is the second name, but you can call him Abbey if you want. Anything else you call him, that's your choice, but that's not mine. So, hey, it's great to have you here. And everybody healthy? Let's start with that.
Everyone is healthy. I'm grateful for life and health, especially during these tough times where not everyone that went to bed last night or in the past year had the privilege of waking up and seeing a new day. So just grateful for life.
Yeah, cheers to that. It's who would have ever thought the world would close down, right? But Mother Nature is pissed and she's smacking us in the head and saying, "Get with the program." Basically.
Exactly.
So,
Exactly.
so how about if we start off like this? If you could briefly introduce yourself, a little bit about your personal, maybe this is the stage you want to tell the world something you've never told anybody before. I don't know. I'll leave that up to you. And then we'll chat about everything you're doing.
Got it. My life is pretty much an open book, so it'll be a taller that reveal something that's not known. A little bit about me. My name is Abbey Wemimo. I grew up in the slums of Lagos, Nigeria. I lost my father at the age of 2, and I was raised by my mother and 2 sisters. One thing my mother always fundamentally believed in was the importance of education. She afforded my school fees to one of the finest high school in Lagos, Nigeria, and that's the reason why I am here today. My mother always believed that education was the paramount investment in any child's life, and everyone should have access to quality education. To that end, I had the opportunity to go to a great school, rub shoulders with the minister's kids and different dignitaries. It really opened up my eyes and say, look, I can do whatever they can do. They have one head, I have one head, they have 2 eyes, and I have the same. So during that course, my fellow sort of classmates took the SAT, and some of them were going to Europe to study. The first time I opened the SAT, I saw a lot of wrong spellings, obviously, because of American English as compared to the Queen's English. I self-studied for the SATs, passed, and I was admitted to the University of Minnesota. During that transition, I came from 80-degree weather to 22 degrees in Minnesota.
Talk about culture shock. Whoa.
It was a character building experience, I must say. My life in the United States, I went to the University of Minnesota, founded my first company, building affordable water infrastructure in developing countries, because personally, I almost lost my life to typhoid. So we built affordable water infrastructure for, schools, did that work in close to 6 countries, provided access to water for like 250,000 people. And I got involved in politics, working with President Obama's re-election campaign, which was a successful one, and transitioned to graduate school, really focused on this idea that I could leverage my business acumen to make the world a more perfect place. So I fundamentally believe that doing good and doing well are not mutually exclusive. It's actually just good business. And during my time, I engaged in a project mapping international development finance dollars on the African continent, worked in the private sector a little bit, particularly at places like PricewaterhouseCoopers, Goldman Sachs, Accenture, and I had a brief stint at the Clinton Foundation also. I spent most of my time in the private sector doing mergers and acquisition, what happens before, during, and after a company is acquired. Did that for over $50 billion in deal value. But I was still hungry to leverage my business acumen, my head for business, and my heart for the world. And how can we marry both to make it a more perfect place, this world we live in? So my co-founder, Samir, we've known each other since NYU. He was working at LinkedIn then. And we decided we wanted to do something bigger than ourselves, something that's related to our personal experiences. So something I left out in my story and transition to the United States was when my mother and I transitioned from Lagos to Minneapolis, we didn't have a credit score. We walked into one of the largest financial institutions to borrow money. My mother was already here at that point, but we didn't, we were turned away and had to go borrow money at over 400% interest rate from a predatory lender. In addition to that, my mother pawned my father's ring and other jewelry she had. And that's how we got started. That's how I was able to pay partial payments to start at the University of Minnesota without no visibility on how I would actually pay for the entire semester. With that leap of faith, that understanding that something would happen carried me through. So really inspired by that experience to start Isusu on 3 premises. Where you come from, the color of your skin, and your financial identity should never determine where you end up on the wealthiest nation the world has ever seen.
Man, you just answered all my questions. No, no, but that's there's nothing like the love of a single mom, and the power and the force of good and everything. So, man, big hug to her. That's for sure. That's amazing. And I like to ask people, in a way you've answered it, but I'm going to ask it again. We talk about the people's why. Like, so why do you do what you do? Like, why is that specifically? Do you do is? I know you said it's because of the credit score, but you still could have had that happen and gone into something else.
The reason why I do what I do, and something I've associated with now for the past 8 years, ever since I stumbled upon it, and what makes sense to me is we live this life trying to amass a whole bunch of things. But we need to understand that we came here naked and we're going to end up in dust. It's vanity upon vanity. But we are in this life and we've been created and we have a particular assignment if we listen to ourselves intentionally. So something that stuck with me for years now is a Martin Luther King quote. I fundamentally believe an individual has not risen until he or she can rise above their individualistic concerns and focus on the broader needs of society. So everything I have done in my life, from providing access to water for a kid in the slums of Lagos, Nigeria, that kid matters to me, even if that kid is not my sibling. From making sure we, re-elect President Barack Obama while I'm in the northwestern region of Minnesota, that matters to me because I think healthcare should be a fundamental human right. And that's something he stood for. And now, focused on Isusu, the financial technology company I co-founded with my partner, if a kid, a family is at risk of eviction, we should all be outraged as a society and making sure, we don't have people sleeping on the streets, because housing should be a fundamental human right. No one deserves to sleep on the streets. And as a society, if we have that, shame on us. That's why I do what I do. It is bigger than me. It's about the people and it's about the impact.
Yeah, thanks for sharing that, because not having whatever that home is, and it can be in any shape, size, or whatever, it's like you're in quicksand almost. You have no foundation, and if you have no foundation and you're in survival mode, there's no creativity. It's all in for just survival, right? And so imagine by what you're doing, I'm sure you have imagined this, by what you're doing and giving people an opportunities to pay their rent, to have that home. Imagine what that boy or girl sitting in that home is thinking about doing now, whereas before he might not have had a chance to think about it because he's busy with surviving. And times multiples of them out there. It's we sometimes don't realize the impact on everything from what that person can offer to healthcare, to crime, to the whole gambit. So it's really spectacular. And like we were talking a little bit before, there's a lot of phrases I like too, and brilliance and simple was one that an influencer told me. And it's complex to do a startup and get it going, but the actual solution ends up being relatively simple at the end of
Right.
the day. And I would think for impact on um, the people that you are given the opportunity to pay their rent and whatnot, um, it has to be simple for them to be able to, not because they're lesser than, but to be able to understand that there are ways to make this work, right?
Precisely. Precisely. And that's it. We need to demystify the myth and the complexity associated with life and offer folks, particularly marginalized folks, and give them a fighting chance. That's our responsibility. And I think when we change our mindset and focus on that, we can really impact the world. We live in a society right now, as we speak, whereby you have record profits on Wall Street, and we have, close to 20 million people at the brink of eviction. We live in a society whereby people are essentially dying, predominantly people of color, from this, virus. Thankfully, we have a vaccine now. And, we were not able to do anything about it because of the ills of the past. We live in a society whereby, the wealth gap continues to widen every second. So we've built what I like to call a mansion on a sinking sand. We've built a capitalist system that works for a very few, but leaves, hundreds of millions and billions around the world behind. It's my fundamentally belief that the way we think about that is to rethink our capitalist system and create something I like to call justice capitalism. Create a society that's more fair, just, and equitable for everyone. I think we can do it. We just need to, think bigger and know it's bigger than us.
Yeah, we can definitely do it. And I was talking to somebody recently, and somebody else asked this couple, they had two kids, "Are you gonna have any more kids?" And the lady said, "It's gonna be really hard to. It's gonna be hard to have more kids for various reasons. Plus, we give all our love to these two kids, and then we're gonna have to split it into three." You're not splitting it into three. It just so happens that it expands. And the only reason I say that is there's people who are fearful of losing control, power, this or that. What they're missing out, I believe, is if you open it up more, I mean, life's going to be even more beautiful, and you're going to have even more in your heart for sure, and your business is going to do well, et cetera, et cetera. You don't lose, you win.
Precisely. You don't lose. Life is not a zero-sum game.
Right.
Life has a lot of opportunities and upsides, and a lot of things can go around. But we just all need to realize that we have a lease that's going to expire at some point on this earth. The question is, what are we going to do with the limited time we've been given?
I like the fact that you use the word lease even for life, as well as for the apartments and everything. Hey, I got to ask you this. University of Cambridge, the Queen Elizabeth Young Leader Program. You talk about comic relief. It was a comic. It was an inclusion of a comic relief. You got to tell me about that. Was that the program?
The program for the Queen's Young. So the Queen's Young Leader Program is a program where the Queen and the Trust select young leaders around the world, and the thesis is really for the Queen to acknowledge them, give them a scholarship to a program at Cambridge University focused on leadership. I was fortunate to be one of the ones selected as a Queen's Young Leader and went through that program. And it was just a plethora of smart people trying to make the world a more perfect place. And that network is really, really solid. But those convenings are just a fraction of who I am. It's interesting. A kid from the slums of Lagos, Nigeria, was also, found out by institutions like that. I don't let those things get in my head or bother me. I think what matters the most is what are we doing with our platform to repair the world?
Yeah.
What are we doing with our platform to lay the carpet and hold the door for others coming behind us?
Yeah, and you really, um, yeah, I would say life's short, and you want to leave some kind of legacy behind, but you don't have to wait till you're 50 to do it. You should be doing it while you're 20, 21, 22, 25. It's actually a lot more fulfilling doing it then, and business will be better too. When you do that. I wanted to ask, we at Fifth Element, we're engaged with clients, all types of opportunities, impact, et cetera, initiatives where we create omni-wins. We bring people together, bringing their expertise and resources together to create one bigger play. Share with us the differentiation of your business model at Isuzu, and how impact is baked into that, and how it affects, how it impacts customer experience. Do you go to the owners of the apartments first and then share with them, how you're going to help the tenants? How does it work? And tell us about why it is impactful.
Yeah. I would start off by saying, just like Fifth Element, we believe in the power of collaboration. Mm-hmm. Isuzu in the Yoruba West African culture is all about collectivism, right? If you want to go fast, you go alone. If you want to go far, you fundamentally go together, because our futures are inextricably tied together. Just to explain what we do at Isuzu and the impact focus, we work with large multifamily owners and operators, and we are able to help them report on-time rental data for the residents living in their development. And when you do that, that helps the residents become more financially healthy. They can establish a credit score, build a credit score, and now they can get access to a good car at a better interest rate. Now they don't have to go to payday loan lenders like my mother and I went to when we came to America. And then if they fall back on rent, they can't afford to pay rent. We have philanthropic investors that decide to invest in a pot of money to make sure we're able to deploy zero interest loans for residents. So those people stay in their homes, because housing is a fundamental human right.
Yeah.
And as a society, we're not solving homelessness backwards. The cost of an evicted person on the streets, including mental health and other issues, is $150,000 every year. Why are we not preventing the eviction by giving them, a zero interest loan for $7,000 to pay 3 months of rent so they don't end up on the street? It's that idea that for the landlord, the resident is your most important asset. And it's our fundamental belief that these residents shouldn't end up on the street, because then as a society, we're solving homelessness backwards, and that's not what we want to do.
Yeah, I love that expression, serving homelessness backwards. And it's great because two parts of the transaction, the landlord and the tenant, and you're helping both of them.
Precisely. It's a win-win situation, right? We don't point fingers. We look at a particular situation and say, in the spirit of Isuzu, what is a win-win, right? Landlord gets paid on time, have a stronger resident base that's financially healthy. And as a society, we're not spending taxpayers' dollars, right, on folks that will end up homeless on the street. It's a win for the landlord. It's a win for the resident. It's a win for the country and the world at large.
I would bet that you're, in a way, creating community within that apartment building as well.
Precisely. It's also a way for folks to engage, get to know each other, and create an affinity in the apartment building. Home ownership is not for everyone, and we sure don't have the housing stock for everyone, but we're doing everything we can to help people get there. But the bare minimum we can do as a society is to give them a basic right to have a roof over their head. And that's what we're working tirelessly to do, because it's been something that's just forgotten. You have 76% of Americans that have less than $400 in their bank account. So what happens in terms of emergency? right? People can't pay rent and they're one paycheck away from the street. That's not who we are. That's not what the wealthiest nation on the surface of the earth should be contending with.
That's 100% sure. And you're embarrassed. You don't know where to go. Um, it just seems like you're in a downward spiral, and there's no
Exactly.
getting out. And
Exactly.
so there's so many good things about this, and including the community. People, after reading a bunch of studies, I've done a lot of work with talent and people and whatever, and the number one thing after food and air that fills people's hearts and souls is belonging. And you're giving them that belonging, it sounds like to me.
And that's our goal, to continue to double down on that, give people a sense of belonging, and that's all that matters.
And it's coming. The money comes from philanthropic donors. Is that right?
We have a blend of capital. We have market rate capital. We have philanthropic capital. It's a blend of people that just want to make sure people have affordable loans, not draconian loans. So we control the marketplace, and yeah, folks get access to the capital.
But to me, it sounds like donation or investment. If you had the choice between doing that and which makes sure people stay in their homes versus just donating it to what may have been a homelessness cause that's not going anywhere, seems like an obvious choice.
Exactly. We need to prevent it. Prevention is better than cure. You don't let the situation happen. There are a lot of people homeless, and we need to contend with that situation as a society and invest as much as we can in it. But we should also think about the root causes of the issues,
Right.
because as a society, we like the symptoms of the issues. So that's what we are particularly focused on is, we do not want to make sure the homelessness rates increase. We want to let the government and other institutions work with the current states, but prevent as many people as we can from being homeless and give them an opportunity to continue to thrive and a fighting chance, because that's all we all deserve as human beings.
Yeah, absolutely. And the number of people that are going to make a difference, like you have, the numbers are huge of people that are even more passionate about making a difference because of where they came from, basically. So super cool. My grandparents came from Kiev, and they were always saying, as long as you have your health, that's the most important thing. Just like that, they said it actually, and then was education, very close to it. But you have to have your health first. So I wanted to ask you, everything's happened this year: COVID, racial justice, injustice, wildfires. I mean, you name it, everything's happened this year. As I said, Mother Nature's pissed off. Do you see in your out and about out there, that people have kind of had a little bit of an awakening of what really is important?
That's a fascinating question. I think people cannot, people have not fully understood the magnitude of what we're dealing with. So if we start with racial justice, there's always been this dialogue that a certain group of people are treated different based on what they look like or what they sound like or what they appear to be. That was rhetoric before until George Floyd, and we started dissecting and dealing with that as a society because everyone was just stuck at home. You couldn't go to a Soul Cycle class to forget about it. You had it in front of you on TV to contend with. And then with the virus, we've seen how fragile life could be. Yep. And how people can die. So I think, there are processes of turning a page, but I think we just pull out the page from the shelf and we're actually ready to start exploring. But I wouldn't say we're exploring in depth just yet. And I wouldn't say we've accepted the realities of a lot of the divides we have. But I'm always optimistic because hopelessness is the enemy of progress.
Yeah, that's true. And the more and more we educate and expose people to what's happened, what's happening, and where we can go, I think is critical. Because I come from Canada. There's so many horrendous things we're hearing about Canada that's happened with people. as well. And it's embarrassing and
Right.
it's horrendous. Got to learn from it and be kind to people, for God's sakes. I mean, it's come on. So, um, one last thing I wanted to ask you is, with so much that happened in 2020, um, I'd like to know kind of again what you're most grateful for. But and with 2021 here and so much come, in the future, what are you most optimistic about?
I'm grateful for life. Like I said, a lot of people didn't have the privilege of seeing 2020 through.
Mhm.
I'm very grateful to be alive. I'm grateful for my family. I almost lost my mother to COVID. Um, I'm just grateful. You know, God spared my mother, and that was powerful. I am optimistic about the direction we're going in as a society. I think there's a lot of acknowledgement going on. Um, and I've always fundamentally believed there's a rainbow after the storm. And right now, we're getting through a stormy period, and the rainbow will come up and the sun will shine again. So I'm very optimistic about things like, bridging the racial wealth gap. I'm excited about the prospects of reducing the wealth divide. I'm excited about what we are going to do from an environmental standpoint to repair our world. I'm particularly excited about the direction this country is going. So it's all exciting stuff. There are certain things that drags you down, but I've always just believed, with strong, boundless optimism that net, we're going to march forward, and that's what I'm looking forward to.
Well said. Well, I'm excited about someone much younger than me. Still getting over that. Someone much younger than me. You know, being one of the people taking the mantle of being a leader who cares and making some things happen. And you already have, and you're doing it right now. And I'm sure there's a lot more accomplishments in the future. So way to go, man. Good job to you. Way to go to your mom, single mom, extraordinaire. And thanks for joining us.
Thank you so much for having me. It's been wonderful, and forward together.
You got it, man. Forward together, onward. Here we go.